But let me give you a tiny tidbit of bits and pieces that come from the Old Voice Network. There is an organization called the National Reconnaissance Office. You've probably heard of it.
Absolutely.
A very super secret group, and a super secret group among super secret groups. In the National Reconnaissance Office, about, I guess, 4 or 5 years now, they had for a number of years a series of satellites called the Keyhole System. You've heard of it?
Yes.
Keyhole. Oh, it was super secret and probably the very best satellite system in the world. Well, they probably made it even better now. They could supposedly read a postage stamp from space. Well, there were some intriguing questions being raised by a number of people about what was known as the Ararat anomaly. Are you familiar with the Ararat anomaly?
Mount Ararat, Noah's Ark.
Okay.
And so the guys in the NRO took their keyhole system and focused on the Ararat anomaly, which is, you know, a puzzle. Well, when the word got out, when the pictures finally were downloaded, and they computerized and enhanced them and cleaned them up, and they pushed them on the wall, or they broadcast them on the wall there at NRO. The remarks went something like this, and these are actual quotes. Jesus Christ, it's a goddamn boat. Christ, it's a big boat. Okay, one would say, why would something like that be so highly classified that it is way above top secret? Why would the discovery of a boat on Mount Ararat be classified so high, far above, you know, anything? Anyhow, the story comes out. The reason they classified it is because after they discovered that it was a goddamn boat, a big goddamn boat, they inserted a team of SEALs on the site. Now, that's a term that the military uses to put a bunch of guys on a scene.
Right.
Apparently they dropped them by aircraft, they parachuted down, a dozen of them or so. They inserted them onto the scene, and these guys spent several days in this goddamn boat. And then they extracted them by helicopters. And when they extracted them, the guys brought with them some anomalous artifacts, which have never been described or named. But those anomalous artifacts is what led to this whole thing being classified not only top secret, but way the hell above. And that's a little bit of information that's come out via the network of the Old
So are
Voice.
you saying this is Noah's Ark?
No one knows what it is. It was originally the Ararat anomaly, but then they discovered that it was a gigantic boat, apparently. And
But a boat built by humans.
Well, it appears to be. It's essentially, from what they gathered, wood. But it's a work of genius, apparently. It was intricately put together, and it's really...
And it survived all these years.
Well, apparently. The question, how many years, you know? When was the flood? The last rumor I had was 12,000 years ago. 10,500 BC.
When are they saying? I mean, I'm sure you have a theory.
Well, the religious implications of it, you see. You know, every ancient culture on the planet has a similar tradition about a flood.
Right.
You know, they have classified Lake Vostok. They took it away from JPL, who was monitoring it, and, you know, with satellites and all. You're familiar with Lake Vostok in Antarctica?
No. Oh, no.
Oh, God, that's a sensitive story in itself. Under the ice in Antarctica, there is a freshwater lake deep, deep down under the ice that's 100 miles long, about 50 miles wide. Fresh water, The temperature in the damn lake is about 65 degrees, which is pleasant swimming, you might say. But at the end of Lake Vostok is what's known as a gigantic mass con, a mass concentration of metal, very similar to the mass cons they discovered on the moon. Gigantic circular-shaped metallic objects deep under the ice at the end of Lake Vostok. Highly classified. JPL had it. National Security Agency took it away from JPL. It's one of the most sensitive things in the world now as to what is the anomaly at the end of the lake, the mass concentration that is so easily picked up by satellites. Another top secret, you know? Mm-hmm. The common folk, you're not supposed to know that.
Right.
Why? Well, you can't handle it, you see. The implications of it are just too vast.
Well, tell me this. Do the Chinese know it?
Oh, I'm sure they do. As you may know, the Chinese now have gone into space in a big way. It never gets into the newspaper, but the last I heard, the Chinese have a satellite orbiting the moon, taking lots of pictures. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm hoping that the Chinese publish a lot of those pictures, because our own NASA people took many, many pictures. The Army took thousands of pictures under the Clementine Project. Are you familiar with Clementine?
I've heard of it.
It was not a NASA program, it was an Army program, Department of Defense. They took thousands of pictures. They've only released a dozen or so. They took pictures all around the moon, backside, bottom, top, everywhere.
Well, are you in touch with Richard Hoagland?
I know Richard. He's a good friend.
Okay. So you know some of his recent research?
Ah, well, I read his recent book, which is dynamite.
Uh-huh. Okay.
You
know about the secret space program?
Oh, yeah.
And you know about the von Braun and the Nazis and what's been carried over to the U.S.
Political
system?
Than that. But the big secret seems to have been for so long is why are we keeping classified the enormous facilities on the moon? And they're not ours.
Whose are they?
Well, that's a good question. I can tell you flatly who they are.
Okay.
You familiar with the term Anunnaki?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, you really have to understand Zecharia Sitchin's work to really grasp where we stand today in relationship with this group of intelligences, and I'm not speaking of one, there are several. The last I heard, there were 4 different groups we were relating with. The Anunnaki are one, and there are others.
Okay, this is very interesting. Can you describe the Anunnaki that first of all, have you had exposure to them face to face?
Me?
Yeah.
Yes, I've met some face to face.
Okay.
Now, whether they were the Anunnaki, I don't know.
Okay, well...
The ones I've run face to face were typically human.
Typically human.
I mean, they could put on a suit, tie, a dress, blue jeans, T-shirt.
Okay.
Walk in our midst and you would never know.
And they weren't 9 feet tall or higher?
No. The ones I've met and the ones I've seen aboard the ships are not that big at all. They're just like us.
Uh-huh.
So we're dealing with 4 different groups that I've concluded, my own personal view.
Okay.
Yeah, you might talk to Jim Sparks and he might tell you there are 8 or 10 or a dozen more. I don't know. I can only tell you what little bit I've learned over the years. There are 4 different groups that I've encountered, and they're all humanoid. One group is completely human.